Hi, everybody, and welcome to the July 27th, 2023 KubeStellar Community Meeting. Hello and welcome to all. We do observe a raising of hands to ask questions or interact with others. If you're in queue, I'll call on you when I see a question that comes up in a timely manner according to whoever's speaking at the time and their cadence. So we have a contributor code of conduct as contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community. In an interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute through reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. Basically, please everybody just be nice to each other. Okay, today we have a few items on our agenda. Let's see if we can get to them. I don't think we'll have any representation necessarily for the work that's been going on with logical clusters, but we'll wait and see. Okay. So we've got a few things on here. First off is a roadmap. Mike is going to give us a little bit of information about the new roadmap for the fourth quarter that we're looking to execute upon. We might have an update on decoupling KCP with logical cluster if somebody joins from that group. If not, then Kube-bind we'll go over in short detail. And an update on containerization. There's an issue 764, which is moving its way through commits and conversation, and then any leftovers besides that in the sprint. Today will mark the end of our second sprint. Well, and from the community standpoint, August 1st is when that officially ends, and then we'll start on sprint 3 on August 2nd. All right, so let's get started. Mike, you're up first with the roadmap. Would you like me to put it in front of us?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, Mike.
Okay, so we're continuing to evolve, but we're calling the next level or phase of evolution the Q4 POC for this year. And so I've tried to write down goals and non-goals, like was written down for Q1. And I highlighted here the things that are new or different from the old one. So maybe just go through them, right? Of course, one of the big things is the decoupling from KCP that comes in two pieces. One is decoupling from KCP TMC. The other is decoupling from KCP core. For the decoupling from the TMC, we already were not really using it. We were relying on the data type definitions there. So we're moving those resource definitions from KCP into KubeStellar. Bob has a PR that he's finishing up on that. Let's see, for the decoupling from the core, there's two parts. One is the logical cluster or space abstraction layer that the HIFA team has been working on, and the other is switching to use Kube-bind instead of KCP's API export and binding. There's design work still in progress there. We're discussing it with Stefan Szymanski in the Kube-bind Slack channel. The couple issues there. One is what the handling of cluster scoped resources. There's the issue both with potential name collisions from independent clients and getting proper access control. And then there's also the fact that Kube-bind compared to KCP's technique is less efficient. So there's that discussion. Also, this moving of those inventory resource declarations, we may not stop there. We may move to some other resources for inventory. For example, the ones that are used in open cluster management. Let's see. Next one is the where your cursor is now, Andy. So in the special case where in general, we've got this 1 to n, 1 to many distribution from center to edge or managed clusters. But when it's 1 to 1, we can do more with a returned state. In general, it has to be summarized because the status section of an object is not designed for this to represent the status from n copies, but when n equals 1, the status section of an object, that's what it is designed for. So we could return, and that's the idea here, is that we would return the reported state into the status section in the workload description space. Then next is about more mature, or I'm sorry, no, the next one is about getting beyond the simple practice that we have. Right now we haven't codified support for any particular complexity here in the relationship between the networking relationship between the managed clusters and the center. So the idea here is to recognize that the syncers running in the managed clusters will open connections using a IP address, or more likely domain name, that may not be one that the KCP server knows about and can bind to. So supporting that is that issue. And then that's really part of a bigger thing here, which is as Andy has highlighted, codifying support, more support for more like a production grade deployment. Currently, we really just have pieces, and we haven't really codified support for very convenient ways of deploying and using those pieces. We've been focused on demos and developers more than, contributors, more realistic users. So there's that. And then finally, another big issue, which is introducing intermediate levels of hierarchy, which again has two aspects. One is the outward flow of information, and even more interesting on the backward flow. That's where you get into really new stuff like handling at intermediate levels and data reduction. Really reduction and handling of the return state, as opposed to just summarizing. Okay, there's that. That's that.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Any questions or comments from the community? Okay. So Mike, I like how you highlighted the major items. These the other ones that are not in bold. What's the is there a reason why you made a distinction between bold and not bold? That was my.
Yes, the bold is what's new and different from what's in Q1,
Oh, okay, okay. So this is in addition to. Got it. Okay. So this
or
is
changes from. Some of it's adds, some of it's changes.
okay, cool. All right. Very good. Is any so there's a lot of partnerships and clients I know that they'll be happy with the changes that you're suggesting, or with the new features. And I think from what I can see, I think it's sized correctly for the amount of time that we have in this one. So that's cool. All right. Any questions for Mike? All right. Thank you, Mike. So I guess in closing that out, what's your next steps, Mike, in terms of operationalizing any of that? Do we have plans for what next steps are, or should we be creating issues against this? Should we just start in earnest looking at PRs, or what are your thoughts? What do you think is the right way to make the next
Well,
step?
yeah, I mean, we have work in progress, right? So Kevin's work on containerization,
Mm-hmm.
and the work on 788 for the, they're about the, you know, late items here.
Right.
We have an issue for hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
We have work in progress on the KCP decoupling.
Okay.
So, I think we have issues at least to cover all of these, and we have PRs in flight already for some of them.
Awesome. All right. Very good. This is great. Thank you very much for formalizing this. All right. Next up, we'll talk about decoupling of KCP. So we don't have anybody representing logical clusters here, but let's move on and give some time to yield to Kube-bind, June and Mike.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to talk first, or you have
Sure.
already covered? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So, Jun has revealed a shortcoming in my thinking. I was thinking of spaces as simply denatured places for holding things, and Kube-bind as an orthogonal feature, but that's not true because Kube-bind, the Kube-bind implementation relies on running something called the connector. Let me just ask Jun to remind us, how many connectors are there? There's a connector per what? Remembering that in general, we have the multiplicity of providers as well as consumers. So we have an M-to-N relationship between providers and consumers.
Yeah, there's a connector per consumer.
So one connector in each consumer works for all the providers that consumer is consuming from?
Right now, all the use cases I saw, I only see one provider. I haven't seen multiple provider use case.
And we won't as long as we only look at KubeStellar.
Right. Yeah.
But when we broaden our view to include actual uses of KubeStellar, they may also use this Kube-bind, and so they would have their own providers. So when there are multiple providers, if a space is consuming from multiple providers, does that space need one connector or one per provider?
So I couldn't have a correct exact answer yet, but my feeling is one connector is enough.
That's worth checking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are just realizing this and trying to figure out how to react. I think we've discussed 3 levels of reaction. One is to give spaces somehow the ability to run pods in general. One would be to ask providers in the logical cluster abstraction layer, ask each provider or its glue code to run the connector. And one would be to completely centralize it and have the logical cluster control cluster run connectors as needed. And we're just starting to discuss that.
Okay. Jun, anything more you want to add?
Yeah. So as Mike mentioned, we have several things to handle when we want to use a Kube-bind in place of KCP's API import and API export. The first thing we realized that is Kube-bind out of box doesn't support cluster scoped object. So what I'm working on is basically two things. First, I enabled that, meaning that we can sync cluster scope APIs from a consumer to a provider. And then immediately I hit the problem of name collision. And then I solved that by introducing a shim layer to do name translations or mapping between a consumer and a provider. And we also have an initial plan on how to handle the access control issue, which is introducing node authorizer-like stuff to have granularized access control on each consumer. That is something for the next step. But right now, we decided to submit what we had now to the upstream to see whether we can get it merged. That's the current status.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jun. Any questions for Jun or Mike on Kube-bind? All right, I just wanted to point out to the audience here that there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that was an interesting, oftentimes I call it the two-pronged approach, but it's like a block and tackling kind of thing that took place here. So Mike was instrumental in getting, and discussing the features and maybe gaps with and possibilities of upstreaming with the Kube-bind folks, Stefan Szymanski in particular. And Jun was very instrumental in taking that information that he knew about API export and bind from KCP and translating into something that's at par with that with Kube-bind and the possibility in the future of using either one interchangeably. So I think it was a really good really great effort on both your parts. You showed how you could use each other's skills and leveraged it to make something big happen. So, congratulations! It's a really big moment for you both.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay. Okay, you're welcome. Let's move on. Updated on containerization. So let's get an update from Franco on where he's at.
Sure. So as you mentioned, there's the PR 784, I think, that tries to put forward a first containerization of KubeStellar. There is a make file, there's a Docker file, there's a README with the instructions. I think if you go to the README, probably it gives more of a sense of what can be done. The container right now contains KCP, contains KubeStellar operators, as well as KCP and KubeStellar plugins, as well as the kubectl binary. So it's KubeStellar can be run completely inside one container. In the future, we are planning to split this out, but for the moment, it was easier to keep everything contained. We can access the kubeconfig as a shared mounted volume, and we can extract the binary for the plugins if you want to run the container locally. The images for version 3.0, 3.1, and 4.0 are available on our public Quay registry for usage as of the moment. And the makefile allows both to build the images as well as to run the images locally for some testing. We are also working, and it's not part of this PR, but we are also working on creating YAML and Helm charts that are currently available only on my fork because I'm still working on them. But we have a preliminary Helm chart that actually deploys the container in a kind cluster, for example. We are still working on a couple of issues. One of them is the TLS for the kubeconfig to access it in the Docker container. So there is an issue that might open the 788. So we're doing some progress on that. Hopefully, we're going to close that loophole soon.
Okay.
That's my update.
Thank you for your update. Okay. Any questions for Franco? Okay. Now there is this section of producer concerns. I don't have a name associated with it, but I know it's on the list. Is there anything we want to make comments on here? Okay.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by that.
I don't know. I remember when I took notes on people that want to put things in this particular agenda, I noted this for some reason. So I guess we were asked to split this out into user and producer. So I don't know why this is here. So maybe we just mark it for now.
Oh, you
Yeah,
mean user and contributor?
Oh, is this contributor? Oh, yeah, that makes better sense, doesn't it? Okay. Yeah. So is there anything we want to talk about in terms of contributor concerns for the containerization or Helm?
I mean, I just will say that it's not really there yet. It doesn't support contributors who make changes that affect this stuff yet. So, that's still, work in progress.
Cool. All right. And you touched a bit on the Helm chart. I don't know. I was looking at that from a testing perspective. I haven't gotten through it yet. Braulio, have you looked at this at all? I thought I heard rumblings that you were going to be looking at the Helm chart.
Yes, and yeah, I have also set up a meeting with Franco yesterday for us to go over all of those things. Yeah.
Okay.
To clarify, I think the M chart works for the deployment. The container gets deployed correctly. We have a couple of issue. One is the handling of the TLS. So there is a connection there, right? Because otherwise it's not possible. There is a current workaround where we disable the TLS, and therefore we can work in that mode, but that's not what we would like to do. There is another. There was another issue that was related to the piping of the YAML for the sinker, but that has been resolved with another PR. It's not in the container yet because it's not in a release yet, but in the future it's going to be resolved. And there is another issue due mostly to my shortcoming that I'm not setting up the ingress correctly, so I need help to work on that. So if you go to my fork of KubeStellar, you can see all the details in a README file where you can find all the issues. Yeah, all those issues are listed out.
Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you for that update. All right. Any questions or comments about Helm or containerization or collaborator concerns? Okay, good.
Franco, one question on the ingress. Is this something you are doing on kind specifically?
I would like to make it generic. I'm testing on kind because that's what I have access. I have a microshift cluster as well where I can test. Obviously there I can create a route.
Okay, because kind, you have to use their own patched ingress controllers.
I did try. I posted actually in 788. I copied you in my current situation.
Okay.
Put it this
okay.
way. So
okay,
I still have applied the patch. It's what I was trying to do. It was very simple. It's the equivalent of kubectl port forward. I would be happy to do that as a starting point, but I could not quite achieve that given, right?
Okay. Thanks.
I put all my details, so the everything that I could not do, right, in Mike's issue.
Okay, I'll have a look. Thank you.
788.
Yeah, at the bottom I put the two issues. I think Mike is working on the TLS. Yeah, that's a response to my TLS concern, or that fundamentally the issue. And the previous longer post from me is about the ingress / port forwarding. It works with port forwarding, but I'm not very professional.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions for Franco? All right. Thank you, Franco. Something that wasn't on the agenda, but before we switched over to talking through sprint definition, just wanted to point out that the roadmap is as was discussed earlier, and then we also have in the getting started, we have the beginners glossary, and so Ashni Manroa, who is a contributor to the KubeStellar project, was able to cobble this together. There's always room for more terms and definitions to be added here, as well as anything else we'd like to add. So I point your attention to that if you'd like to take another crack at it and add some, embellish it with some more terms or information. We'd love to have your contribution. Just click on the edit on any of our documentation, and it'll take you to a GitHub page where you can go ahead and work on a potential PR. So thank you for that contribution, Ashni. All right. Let's move on to looking at our sprint definition. So lots of done, looking real good. We made a lot of progress this sprint, a lot of highlights. And so, of course, this meeting's here. We have some work going on between Kube-bind and KubeFlex, which may or may not close this sprint. It's not on the critical path at the moment. We have application into KubeCon China. It'll be held in Shanghai this year in September, and that we should have notification by the 31st, July 31st. What is this, 28, 29, 30, 30? So by Monday, we should know if we've been accepted. There's two talks, one on KubeStellar and one on our work with KubeStellar Sinker and Kyverno with C2P. This will be very cool. Are some of our counterparts in not only in Yorktown but also in some folks in Tokyo and some folks in Kyverno have agreed to help co-present this. So this is really good, I think, for us in terms of publicity. We got an update on Kube-bind. We got an update on containerization. We're working on a video to show how KubeStellar's logical cluster component displaces KCP, and so that's in the works. We should have some updates on that in the next couple days. Hopefully that'll close out before the end of the sprint. And we've got one major bug that's open at the moment, and it's being worked through by one of our contributors, Bob Phillip. And so hopefully we get Doxecutable back and running so it doesn't block any other potential PRs from collaborators. So that's going to close us out. This will be done on August 1st, which I believe is Tuesday. Wednesday, August 2nd, we'll start Sprint 3. Sprint 3 is still in the process of being, let's say, formed. So if you have anything that you want to add into the sprint, now's the time to do it. I figured we'd take some time here to talk a bit about, what should be in these columns and if there's anything obvious that's missing. And so we can let's first look at the critical path items and work back and then go to new and to do. So we have the epic for use KubeStellar without KCP core. That's still underway. That's the overarching issue that covers all of the logical clusters and location and sync target removal and all kinds of other good stuff that has to be cared for during the process. Of course, Kube-bind is included in that. We have a KubeCon North America presentation. Actually, there's could be as many as 4 happening that affect KubeStellar. 2 of which, one is, of course, on KubeStellar itself proper. The other is on Kyverno and KubeStellar Syncer, which we have somebody was from Kyverno's contributor group was nice enough to co-present with us, a gentleman by the name of Eddie Charlie. So he's in the Slack group. We've been communicating back and forth about how to get that presentation forward, and it looks like we'll know more about that by the end of August, as to which either one of those 2 have been picked. We also have 2 other papers or 2 other spots in the presentation schedule that are potentials. One is for the working group IoT Edge. I've been contributing to an Edge native application behavior white paper along with some other folks from Cisco and from other areas around the IoT space. And so we're hopeful that that gets a half-hour talk. We'll know more about that again at the end of August. And then we also, during the lightning talks and or the opening or closing of the Edge Day, we should have honorable mention for that white paper as well as KubeStellar. So we're working on all fronts, try and get some more publicity. This fall should be rather big in terms of our presence at KubeCon, we hope. And we also have a booth for IBM that will be, we should be part of as well. We'll have some cool giveaways, of which to mention, maybe even somebody might win this. So the ability to build their own Lego set and join the Star Wars clan. Okay, so that's it for KubeCon update. We our 771 issue is tied to one of the roadmap items that Mike was talking about earlier in this call, the discussion about hierarchy. So that is already highlighted in the roadmap. Let's go back to that. Here we go. So issue 771 pertains to that last item there. So let's go back. Issue 772, binding to exactly one workload execution cluster. That maps back to the exact, not summarized, reported state returned. So that looks like that's well represented in the queue already. So those are all in the critical path. Probably can be backed off from critical path to just put them in progress, I think, at this point, because they're moving. All right, let's do that. We have some work that's going on in the open source community with MCAD, and that's something that Braulio's been working on. So that should be interesting, of which I think we're working today on deploying MCAD. And in the future, we hope to do configuration updates to MCAD. So that's, I think, underway, and that's in the critical path. And we have let's see, KubeStellar enables Argo CD. Okay, so there's a discussion underway to determine how best to support Argo CD in the future. We know Argo CD does a lot of work in terms of being creating deployment architectures. And what we'd like to see Argo CD do is focus less on multi-cluster distribution and more on continuous deployment. And we think some of their customers might be interested in that as well. So coupling KubeStellar with Argo CD it may lead to quite a few advantages from the standpoint of modularity. And so if you want to read up on any of the information that June's been collecting in this issue and what kinds of things we might do, the outcome of this work should be, a one-page reference architecture in the format of a JPEG or a PNG file, and that will represent, how one might deploy Argo CD across KubeStellar environment state and on multiple clusters. Coupled with that, a tutorial, and then maybe even use that material in a conference to co-present with Argo CD, as well as bring it to Argo CD as Argo CD's community meeting to discuss the potential for working together now and in the future. So that's on that as part of that work ahead. We've got a few other items, so that covers the critical path. Let's talk a little bit about in progress. So in progress, I think that in progress at the moment, let's see if we have this covered. So Mike, you want to talk a little bit about customization? Is that on your roadmap?
Customization?
Yeah.
Well, we do have that implemented to a degree, and yeah, there is some, open issues here about doing it better. So I think, let me see if I just read this one correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's right. So we have kind of a preliminary solution, and there is an issue that we have not prioritized very highly to do better. By the way, another thing that's not a new goal, but is also not achieved from Q1, which is the summarization. And when you think about Argo, if Argo is going to defer the multi-cluster part to KubeStellar, then we do have to have an actual summarization in place so that because Argo does take responsibility for visualizing reported states. So we have to be able to get it some reported state that it can visualize. In this case, it would be summarized in general reported state.
Okay. Do we have an issue that represents that, or is it on the roadmap?
We have an issue for summarization. We don't have a particular issue for the connection to Argo. This is just one of those cases where these things should just play together. Well, I mean, the summarization is there to serve Argo and everybody else.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so let's see if we can find that and make sure it's pumped into so that it carries on. I know that 772, I got that one. I don't know if we have anything else though.
Okay, I don't know if we should take time in this meeting.
So maybe June and you can get together and determine if all the prerequisites or the requirements of the Argo CD work.
So there's a PR. There might not be an issue.
Oh,
we'll make sure there's an issue.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. So my final question for customization is, do you want it in this sprint or do you want to push it out or put it just in the backlog?
Yeah, let's put it in the backlog for the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
and
I didn't see it on your roadmap, so.
has dissatisfaction with the current level of solution, we need to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Yeah, that's what the point of this this grooming session here is to try and now that the roadmap you have proposed is in place, now we can apply that filter against this list and make it such that it's achievable, right? Not that it's just a hodgepodge of issues and things that are listed. Don't want that to happen. All right. Addition of KubeStellar controller manager to run all processes required to run KubeStellar. Do you think this is a priority for Sprint 3?
No. I mean, that's one choice of how to run the processes. It's not the only one. So I would say, yeah, I think that's one alternative we haven't really settled. Right? Franco has drafted a different solution.
Mhm.
And I think Franco anticipates that's just a step along a progression of development. So TBD exactly how we choose to proceed.
Okay. Yeah, and more importantly is do we think we can manage to incorporate it for Q4? And that's one
Again,
of the,
before whether we incorporate it, we first have to decide whether we want that choice or a different choice.
right, yeah.
Because there's a design choice to be made.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Oh, and maybe we don't have to make only one choice, but there's some choice to be made.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and I don't see that necessarily. I don't see that pointed out in your roadmap. So I don't know if it even
Well, it's
belongs.
covered under the topic of a more production grade
Oh,
deployment.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. Yeah.
But it's again, that's just a high level goal. All the
Yeah.
design choices are not exactly stated in the goals list.
Yeah, no, I got my answer. I think you're right. It's under production grade. Agreed. Okay. Okay. KubeStellar is a control plane provider for interplanetary configuration lifecycle management. I think this is well cared for, so I'm not going to go into it. Just the essentials is that we're working with European Space Agency in the public, in the open, to bring about the potential for using KubeStellar as a control plane across multiple interplanetary devices such as satellites or rovers or moon bases, and of course, uh, bases back here on Earth to initiate that communication and deployment of workloads. So stay tuned. A lot of interesting work going on there. This will feed into issues like hierarchy from that have been explained in issue 771. Okay, we covered those two. Feedback on website documentation. So I know Ashni's been working on this. Ashni, you want to give us an update as to where you are here and what you think is ahead of us in the next couple of months, how we can evolve the documentation? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, I've created like a simple glossary, but another idea that people have been like posting about in that issue is having like a KubeStellar primer, um, which is just like a quick like rundown of what KubeStellar is and the concepts behind it. Yeah, so that's also I also created that in the user guide, but I just created the header. I haven't really written anything for that yet. So that could be something to work on so that the user guide page is totally populated and completed. Um, and
Okay.
I think that's it at the moment. There's been other discussions of other things to change in that thread that anyone can take a look at
Okay.
and add to.
Great. Thank you for the update.
Mhm.
Cool. So yeah, please continue. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, OpenZD. So there has been some renewed interest and work going on here. So there's been some back and forth in the Slack channel. So I look forward to seeing some more developments in that in the coming quarter. So I left it in progress. Maybe we'll even be able to complete it in the upcoming sprint. Support load balancers. So 788. I know this has been underway. So this has implications for things like Helm and containerization, and of course goes towards productization. So I think that's self-explanatory. We have some other items that are in the to-do list. So anything else? Does anybody see anything that's in progress that they're working on that is not reflected in either the progress or the critical path? Okay. So we'll continue to go through the list, and if you see anything in the to-do that's actually in progress or should be on hold, let us know. So the first is kubectl plugin should be based on proper arg passing. This is something that I took on, but have not had time to look at. So, but I intend on working on it this sprint. So I just did not moved it to in progress because it's not in progress. Version coordination between syncer container image and the default reference to it. I think this is an ongoing issue. This is something that we continue to hash back and forth about, how we can not how we can do a better job of not only building the container images that we use, but also referencing them from our different releases. So this will be an ongoing issue. I've tagged myself to it. It's sort of kind of in progress, but not really. So haven't committed to moving it over just yet. KubeStellar is the preferred control plane for distributed observability projects. I think that has to do, I don't think we have any work defined yet for this. Do we, Braulio? Oh no, there's the blog that's underway.
What does it mean?
Yeah, so this is so where do we have this? This is Hub and Spoke and Hub and Spoke. You know, I just put this in as it'll come back to me. Oh, for distributed projects like Prometheus and others. So the idea was to potentially support observability. So this might mean the ability to deploy a Prometheus client and or retrieve Prometheus metrics. We don't have yet anything really defined in terms of what that might mean. So it's kind of it's open-ended. It's more of a nice to have at the moment. Yeah, Braulio, go ahead.
So this issue, so with I think that the first item that we had to address was about the for KubeStellar to support the hub and spoke architecture, and we have working with the team, and we have made that integration per se, and now we are going to write a blog. So the team that we work with. So it's now running that integration. So the application that the team is using collects observability metrics using the hub and spoke architecture per se.
Right, this is an IBM research team, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was, right?
Yes. Yes. So we are kind of that we complete that integration. So at the next step, we are now writing a blog, and then after the blog's done, we have to decide with the team or if there are other directions that we want to follow. With that issue, but that issue is definitely in progress. The five.
Yep, gotta move that over. It's 518, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Braulio, for pulling me out of a ditch there. Okay, so the next one up is denaturing view. So, Mike, I know that this oftentimes gets conflated, or I conflate it oftentimes with hierarchy. Should this issue be closed? Should it be part of the hierarchy issue? Is this even valid?
Yeah, I think I would not put it as part of, I certainly not lead with it as a definition of hierarchy. And in fact, we have design choices to be made. I think when we get into the interesting things that happen on the way back for information returning to the center, we probably don't want to simply transport everything denatured all along the way. It has to be renatured for processing.
Right.
So I really do not connect this strongly with hierarchy at all.
Good.
I connect it more strongly with the work that the Haifa research guys are doing on the logical cluster abstraction. They're abstracting over different kinds of spaces which have more and less stuff built in. So that makes greater demands on denaturing, so that we can use spaces that have more stuff, controllers for more stuff built in. So the issue is not what definitions are built in, but what has controllers built in.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So anyway, so that work, I think, ups the importance of this. So far, we've been able to skate by on not completing this work because the KCP workspaces are so denatured out of the box. But as we work with other space providers that have more controllers out of the box, that ups the importance of completing this.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Would it be fair to assign this over to Ezra and let's see if he can take a look at it, and also couple this with decoupling?
We can ask him to look at it. I don't know what he's going to say about his availability or his interest, so on.
Okay, very good. I'll just put it in as decoupling and that'll trigger it Maybe it'll go. So yeah, I was poking around in the wrong backyard. So I'm glad you cleared that up for me.
Just as a comment, this idea of starting different controllers to achieve some kind of denaturing behavior, I don't think this applies to the kind cluster or to the regular kube cluster, because you don't really control there what you can start. This will only apply to something like kubeflex, where you can define which controllers you want to start.
I think this view, right, is implemented by a view server, so it would not require, well, I mean, we need a place to run the view server, but it's,
well, the view is another approach to basically define and decide, okay, I can, denature things on the fly. So when I store them, no matter which controllers are running, there is no behavior associated. That, I think, is the more general solution. But I guess the question was, should we still continue to go in this general solution? I don't think Ezra has been looking in the view at all. Or we
no, he hasn't.
Or we say we do something like KCP has done, at least for the use case that we have done with KCP, that is about really defining which controllers you start, and that's all. So I guess we have to decide also how we want to pursue this.
Yeah.
You could raise the question of whether to avoid the need for denaturing by avoid the need for a denaturing view by denaturing all the spaces. You could ask for that. I wasn't going to ask for that, but we could consider that.
Denaturing all the spaces, I guess it means having a view in front. I mean, something like the view.
Well, okay, we're running around in circles on terminology now. Let me try to say it a different way, more verbosely. We have two ways of delivering denatured behavior to clients, either with a view server that transforms the objects, or by making sure that all of the spaces lack the controllers that we want to be, do not have the controllers that we do not want to be there.
Yes, and the second one can only be achieved for certain providers, like the kubeflex.
And that's why I was thinking along the lines of the first one, with a view server, so we don't rely on all the spaces being as denatured as a KCP workspace.
Yeah, but I don't believe there was any plan agreed on the first one, right? I don't think Ezra ever agreed to. I mean, they should be here, right, to discuss.
I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. And in fact, I haven't really talked about this. I think the denaturing view server is a separate piece of work from the work that Haifa is doing. We will need to find a way to make sure that it gets invoked and running and used in the right places. But I think that's fairly separate work from the basic abstraction technology that Haifa is developing.
Exactly, that was my point.
Okay. Maybe we can queue this up for an architecture discussion at some point.
Yeah, I think we need more discussions, including Ezra also.
Yep. Got it. Marked it. Cool. All right. Let's see. Move beyond 2023 Q1 POC inventory that's in the roadmap. Is that, or is it in the roadmap? It's actually not highlighted necessarily, is it?
No, it is highlighted.
It is
yes.
highlighted? Yeah,
yes.
Okay. All right. So do I want to move this into in progress, or do you think that's appropriate?
We've discussed it a little bit. That's the degree to which it's in progress.
Okay. All right. I can leave it where it is if that's what you prefer. That's fine. Deal with missed deleted cluster events. This is a PR, so I'm going to move this over to in progress. Add a tutorial on using Kyverno with KubeStellar. So I don't think we have anything planned for this yet. So I'm going to put this in the backlog. It's not been committed to. And then, all right, so moving over to new. So the difference between to do and new isn't assigned to anybody. Nobody, it's basically a new issue. It's not been discussed. So or prioritized. So, but it's in the sprint because it could potentially be here if discussed. So these are like architectural kinds of discussions. Mike, I didn't know necessarily what to do with this specific one, other than to say that, this was a desire that we had, but I don't know that we have any plans to actually tackle it.
Well, I did half is too quantitative, but I did part of it already. So yeah, I guess it should be assigned to me. Or I guess maybe the rest of it. So what I did cover is the Kubernetes. So this is about in KCP, they have support in TMC for just 4 of the Kubernetes resources that are about managing containerized workloads. Deployment and pod and service and ingress. And so this is about adding support for all the other relevant resources from Kubernetes.
The workload API. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I did the ones for resources that are namespaced. I held off on the ones that are not namespaced because we have issues with cluster scope things. Although I'm also thinking that those issues are not exactly relevant here because we're not using, well, we are. Anyway, so I held off on the cluster scoped ones. So I think put this in the to-do. I think it should be done. I think so I guess the question is, will these be defined? Will users define these using CRDs or Kube-bind? If they use Kube-bind, that brings in the other discussion we're having with cluster scoped resources. So that's why I held off on those. So there's some of this still to do.
Okay. Moved. All right, and then I think, okay, so denaturing view we discussed, work prereq. This is something that we've asked if Bob could take a look at. So it's assigned, so I'll move it over into the do. Wrapped objects in mailbox namespaces. Mike, you care to give us any information on?
Yeah. So this is something that it's a
Oh, this is
fairly
the OCM discussion, right? Yeah.
well, it's part, right? We
Yeah.
don't have to move. There are in some sense 3 pieces, 3 steps that we could take, 2 of them independently. Well, okay. So the structure is we could adopt the OCM inventory without adopting anything else from OCM. We could switch from our current mailbox spaces to using manifest work wrapped objects in mailbox namespaces. And we could do that independently of anything else. If we do both of those 2 things, we could then also potentially switch to using the clusterlet from OCM. So that's the broad thought. And there is a document, that I started on in our Google Docs drive outlining issues around there. There are some issues.
Okay, do you have that document referenced in here? I didn't see it.
No, I'll add that.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that concludes the Sprint 3 grooming exercise for today. So my question will go around the horn real quick. Bob, do you see, is anything missing? Do any community members, I'll start with Bob, have anything that's missing from this Sprint definition that they believe should be here, that they're working on, that should be here, or that we've missed? Bob, we'll start with you.
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin? Anything that you don't see in this Sprint definition that you think should be there that you're working on?
There's the item that I brought up as an issue, which is a future thing that we're going to have to approach, which has, again, this goes to making it a robust hierarchy and control system. So
All right.
where we have
That's a really
multiple,
good- yeah.
when we have the issue of multiple execution clusters, which are dependent on each other.
Right.
So,
Gotcha. All right. So let's put that in for discussion. I'll put that in Sprint 3. And we'll put that under new. That flags it for discussion. All right, so we got sprint 3 here.
And I may
There.
refill that now that the conversation has started to better describe what the issue is.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Kevin?
Nope, I will be gone for a few weeks, so don't sink the ship while I'm gone.
We'll try not to. All right, June, you're up next. Is there anything you're working on that you don't see in the sprint definition, or anything that you notice is obviously missing?
I think everything is tracked.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Franco, anything in here missing, or things you think that should be that aren't here?
No. I mean, the Helm chart is gonna spill into the next one, right?
That's fine. Yeah, we can move that over on. Yeah, I can move that over when the sprint closes.
The Docker container hopefully is gonna be finished in the sprint, but the Helm chart with the TLS dependency stuff like that should spill over.
So let's do that if we can. Do we have the Helm on here? We don't have. Do we have a Helm chart issue? I'm not sure that we do. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, sprint 60. Geez. Wow, sprint 16. You got a lot of time to go.
Okay. I like that. Also, I mean, consider I'm gonna be out August 10, so it may or may not happen sprint 3.
Yeah. We'll put it in sprint 3, and if it happens, it happens. All right. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so that covers Franco. Ashni, anything you see that is missing from sprint 3 that should be there or that you're working on?
Nope, it all looks good.
Okay, thank you. Braulio, anything you see missing or should be worked on?
So just a small comment. So the work that we are doing on the environments, I'm not sure if any should be here or yeah, that's on item that
Yeah, I saw that on here. Do you want to put this in 3?
Sure.
Okay. Good. Okay. Anything else you noticed?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Paulo, is there anything you see missing from sprint 3 or should be added?
No, I don't see.
All right. Thank you. And Mike, anything you see missing?
Nothing really obvious, no.
All right. So there is a backlog tab here. And there are items that are listed in here, and so take a look if you want. And let's see, that should go away. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so take a look if you want. These are things that are not committed to sprints. We can go over these next time we have a meeting if we would like to incorporate any of them and see if they should be prioritized. But in the meantime, that's where they're sitting. Okay, thanks everybody for your attendance today. If does anybody have any questions or comments for the community? All right, thank you all for your attendance, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.